Hello, hello, hello. It's your one-armed prediction guy. One arm today because my shoulder's a little messed up. But anyways, aside from the fact that I'm getting old and therefore everything is not working properly, let's talk about mixed martial arts. So two big stories in the dumb files of MMA. We'll talk about the series first. Jamahal Hill's domestic violence issue. We have a police report. We have testimony of the victim. Essentially, this boils down to a familial argument in which Jamahal Hill sucker punched his brother over the topic of him being a deadbeat dad. Now, there are people who are like, well, let's wait for Jamahal Hill's side of this. And sure, obviously, if this ends up as a court case or whatever, we will get that secondary side of the story. But I'm not really going to tackle the whole like what is Jamahal Hill in the wrong here beyond the fact that the idea that like assaulting your brother is just a part of life. Don't get me wrong. Me and my brother in our teens had many run-ins of a somewhat conflictual nature with physical contact involved. But Jamahal Hill is a UFC 205-pound champion and a functional adult. Well, I shouldn't say functional. Legally adult. And people are like, well, would you get your brother arrested? Yeah, if my brother hit me with like a baseball bat, which is probably pretty close to what Jamahal Hill's punching you feels like. Yeah. I don't know why that's a hot take. Like, yeah, there's a limit to what family can get away with doing to you. Granted, yeah, sure, that's probably higher than a random guy on the street. There is that familial pull that that prevents you from cutting off people who have been kind of toxic in your life because they're related to you or whatever. But like the idea that there's like, oh my God, if you ever report your brother who is a UFC champion for hitting you, you're just like, where are we going with this? Anyway, so yeah, I'm pretty anti Jamahal Hill right now. And the second thing was, which is ridiculous, is Dana White announcing he's giving away a Tesla Cybertruck, and like that being the focus, at least today, of his social media presence. I mean, I get it, obviously, but it's just so silly. In this age of where he's talking about like, I have the biggest things coming, the biggest announcements coming. Here we go, Tesla Cybertruck, everybody. You right there. You could get a Tesla Cybertruck. An absolute death trap of a vehicle. Anyways, that's our non-fight card related stuff for the week. Let's talk about this fight card. I have exceptionally mixed emotions about this fight card. Also, I'm going to pull up best fight odds here because I didn't do that before I started recording. Best fight odds, please. Hopefully they have it all in the same place. They often split the UFC cards up into like multiple things. No, okay. This one looks like it's more or less in the same place. Awesome. Dope. Let's roll. Excuse me. This card is a bit weird and like it doesn't really have a main event. Like I like Yadong Song, I like Chris Gutierrez, but it feels very weird that they're in a main event together. The co-main event does feel like a main event that they've been doing, but like a bad main event that they've been doing. But at the same time, I'm fairly interested top to bottom in the fights. Like I am interested in the main event. I am interested in the co-main event. I am interested in Simu Darji versus Tim Elliott. I am interested in Nasrat Akparast, Jamie Malarkey, Andre Muniz, Jung Young Park, Kenan Song, Kevin Doucette, Steve Garcia, Mel Costa, Stephanie Egger, Luana Santos, Tetsuya Taira, Carlos Hernandez, and Ryan DeSantos versus Talita Alan Carr. Like, I'm interested in everything except for the Shannon Ross fight because it's Shannon Ross. I feel like I have to say this because I use Shannon Ross as like a negative a lot of the time. It's not that I dislike him. I know nothing about him like as a person. It's just purely as a fighter. I don't know why he's in the UFC. I don't know what we're doing here. I don't understand. Um, anyways, we'll get to that fight in a bit. But like there's no fight I'm dying to see. So I have to on a thumbs up, thumbs down scale, I have to go like thumbs in the middle on this card. But that being said, there could be some interesting betting. I haven't looked at the betting odds. Usual disclaimer when it comes to betting: do not bet what you cannot afford to lose. This is MMA. There is no actual like good way to make money. Just straight up, there is not. You will lose money betting on MMA. There you go. All right, fights. Yadong Song versus Chris Gutierrez. I'm very happy to see Chris Gutierrez getting like a big high profile fight, but like it does seem really, really weird that you would go from second fight of the night against Haile Alatang, I think it was, to main event in your next fight. Like that is very bizarre, very weird matchmaking, very reminiscent of the 125-pound division back in the day when like the UFC was like determined not to make their division a thing because they would put Demetrius Johnson up against somebody who had previous to them fought on nothing but undercards. They were perfectly serviceable fighters. They were fine. They had earned their title shot and whatever. But because the division was never focused on the main card, you would end up with these guys that the casual fan did not know fighting for a title. And then, of course, they assumed that the division is crap. And then, of course, you're also battling with the little guy stuff and everything. Like flyweight's always got its own unique set of issues, but it was made worse by the booking. This is kind of that same thing where it's like, Yadong Song has gone from beating Ricky Simon, which is a big win, and a very good fight against Corey Sandhagen, to fighting a guy who is an undercard fighter. A good undercard fighter, a guy who shouldn't have been on the undercard to begin with, but an undercard fighter nonetheless. Those who do not know Yadong Song, number one, I don't know what you're watching here for, but powerful fighter, power striker, guy with a good, pretty solid wrestling, pretty solid grappling, reasonably well-rounded skill set. It's bantamweight. You don't get to the top of it. You don't get a ranking without being fairly well-rounded. He is at his best when he can be fighting at long range or fighting in the pocket. He can pressure. He can fight on the back foot as well. He has good accuracy, good speed, good power, like I said. He's creative and throws a lot of variability into his striking. So he's just very good. Like, stamp very good or next to that name. And he's only 26 years old. So like the chances of him improving and getting better and becoming a better and better version of himself is still on the table. It may not happen. He did start very, very early. And I've been through this before. There's a lot of fighters that start, super early, 18, 19 years old, whatever. Even earlier than that, 16 stuff. And they just kind of like stop improving in their 20s. Like they have a sort of similar timeline to improvement as somebody who started fighting professionally in their early 20s, and as a result, that their final product very early on. But he could still improve. He still has time, and physicality should still be on his side. Chris Gutierrez, excellent low kicker, very, very evasive guy, excellent footwork, great at neutralizing you, taking away one piece at a time, compromising your leg, making it hard for you to chase him while he evades. And he's not a useless grappler or wrestler. Like, he is capable in every aspect of the game. I had a burp there. But he's got a tall order in front of him. Not like literally tall, because Yadong Song's only 5'8". But like it's a big order to take away Yadong Song's tools and deal with his speed and deal with his power and deal with his athleticism. And if you want the most similar opponent, it's the Pedro Munoz fight, which Gutierrez lost. It was certainly competitive. It was good. It was whatever. But, he did lose. He lost to a guy who just was going to pressure through the leg kicks and have, reasonably good cage sense and ability to put him against the cage and do his thing, or against the fence, I should say. And, just kind of ask him multiple questions as opposed to people who like ask one question, have it taken away, and then ask another question. So I do have to take Song to at some point just TKO him. He's got 5 rounds to work with here. It's hard to see that working for 25 minutes. Gutierrez has got some dangerous counters to him. He's, like I said, he's a dangerous high profile or a high risk fight. and low reward because again, people don't really know him. So like, I don't know. I keep looking at this. I keep looking at this fight on a technical level, being like, this is gonna be fun. This is gonna be interesting. And then I look at it on a business level, and it's like, this is stupid. So yeah, I've got Song by TKO. What are the odds for this one? Looking at like plus 275 to plus 300 for Gutierrez. Yadong Song coming in at minus 350 to about minus 430. Feels about right. Pretty much can't bet on Song at those odds. Even though I'm very, very confident in winning, I probably just won't touch this one at all. Anthony Smith versus Khalil Roundtree, 205-pound match, is our co-main event of the evening. Let's cut through just the bullshit and everything. Roundtree should win the fight. He is incredibly physical. He has moments of great brilliance as a striker and even like some smarts to avoid the grappling. And Anthony Smith is looking a little bit washed. It's been a long time since I thought that Anthony Smith was like really should actually win a fight. But this is the thing. Roundtree found a way to lose to Martin Prachnio in 2021 and have a close fight with Eric Anders. And he's just unreliable. Not even just on the results, because it's not necessarily the win-loss record that's unreliable about him. It's the fact that like there are fights where he looks like this incredibly explosive, strong, technically proficient Thai striker with nasty low kicks, a good jab, and a willingness to bang to the body, which you know I love. And then there are days where he just sucks, where all of that goes away. Like the speed is still there, obviously. The power is still there, but like there's a gun shyness that sometimes creeps up with him. There's a lack of fight IQ that comes into play. All of these things are problematic. And that's kind of like what it comes down to is I don't trust Roundtree, but like there isn't really actually a way that at his best he loses to Anthony Smith. Smith is, of course, the comprehensive veteran, overachiever, not a great athlete by any means, but like he's a guy who struggles when it's relative reach parity. 76 to 76 and a half in this case, although Smith is taller at 6'4" to 6'1" Roundtree. So he'll probably have a functional reach advantage. But I kind of have to go with Roundtree by decision, and then if he flops, he flops. And I don't know. Again, I'd stay away from this. If you're going to bet on this fight, I guess you bet on Anthony Smith at underdog odds of anywhere from plus 155 to plus 190 right now. Roundtree is a minus 192 to minus 250 favorite. I would stay the hell away from that. I would stay the hell away from betting on Roundtree at any time at favorite odds. Moving on down to Sumu Darji versus Tim Elliott. This is a late notice replacement fight. It was supposed to be Sumu Darji versus Alan Nascimento, which I was comfortably picking Nascimento in because Sumu Darji, while a pretty good fighter, a fairly well-rounded guy, good power, is a guy who has been out-grappled before and out-wrestled before and, has some poor submission instincts that put himself deep in there. And it's like Nascimento, not a great striker, but like a very, very aggressive person. He's going to get this to the ground. There's going to be scrambles. He's going to tap him out. And that was kind of it. And Tim Elliott can do the exact same thing, but like we were talking about someone being very unreliable before, Khalil Roundtree. We're talking about another one here. Tim Elliott is the alkali metal of MMA. He is incredibly volatile. And sometimes he just blows up. Sometimes he'll just gas himself out. Like it's a chronic case where he fights at a very, very high pace, but like doesn't actually necessarily have the gas tank to back it up. Like he'll just dump the gasoline on himself, light it on fire, and just go. And like sometimes he just gets really, really tired. And sometimes he just doesn't seem to really have. Sometimes he lets the anger get in the way of him. He's also a dirty fighter in the sense that he will foul. Not in the ways that I tend to get annoyed by because like he's not really an eye gouger or a low blow artist or anything like that, but he is a guy who I will grab your gloves. I will grab the cage. The ref's just going to warn me. I'm just going to keep doing it. And that at some point should theoretically bite him with like point deductions. I'm going to go with Elliott by submission here. Sumu Darji just is not a reliable enough grappler for me. He's not a reliable enough wrestler for me. Yes, he's powerful. Yes, he can nuke people. But which is rare at 125. Well, this apparently is happening at 135, which would make sense given the late notice nature of it. They're doing this with 12 too, because we're talking about this later with Costa and Garcia, where they're booking a short notice fight up a weight class, which I like. I want more of that because let's avoid the drama of the weight cut. It's better business wise too, because like I've kind of always said this, like whenever I'm talking about fighter rights and things the UFC are doing wrong, someone inevitably asks like, okay, well, what's the business reason for them to be nicer, essentially? And the business answer is, quite frankly, you want this fight to go on. The UFC, at least publicly, does not like it when they have to cancel a fight. They do not enjoy it. They do not love it. So giving people on short notice less of a weight cut is good for business. It allows you to keep the fight on. Now, in this case, and in Costa and Garcia's case, it doesn't really matter. These are not hyped up fights, but like, let's see, like the Jalen Turner versus Bobby Green fight, which somehow Turner did make weight for. That was a classic example of something that should have been, up a weight class or a catch weight of some kind, 165, maybe 160. Try it. And I get that I get that the fighter accepting on the other end of this, it has to accept it. But like the irony is the UFC will bully fighters into accepting so much and they won't use their bullying for like fighter safety. It's kind of insane. So yeah, I'm happy about that. But like, yeah, Tim Elliott should win this fight. And if he doesn't, it's him beating himself. Let's see what the betting odds are for this fight, because this one might have betting promise. Mudarji is the underdog. Plus 107 to plus 118. You could still work with like a minus 130 to minus 150 line on Elliott. But like, I have to say, we're 3 fights in and there is no bet screaming to me. Moving on to Nasrat Haqparast and Jamie Mullarkey. Lightweight bout here. Nasrat Haqparast is a guy I was hyped on, mostly from other people because I'm not an expert on his region. I don't watch a lot, but like people were like, he's good. He's like this young, fairly impressively varied skilled striker who has like the explosiveness, the durability, the speed, the size, and whatever. It's like he's gonna be good, and I bought into that. I bought in hook, line, and sinker. They reeled me in. And I'm really disappointed about that. And I get it. It's not like I think that they were lying to me or they were wrong. It's just he really never got better. Like I've been expecting this like step up from Haqparast for years now, where like he's just things are going to click. He's going to figure it out and he's going to do better. But he's still really repetitive as a striker. He's still kind of stiff. He's his thought tree doesn't diverge much. There are like 2-path decision trees all the way through his decision tree that don't get to a third or fourth path. And that's like, yeah, you're going to have success early on. Sure. You're going to come out, you're going to do some things, and your speed and your athleticism and your physicality are going to give you early success. And then at some point, a smart fighter, say a Dan Hooker or a Bobby Green, are going to be like, wait, jabs, okay, jab hook. Okay. He's just doing the same thing over and over again, and bang, there's the counter. And even Landon Quinones almost managed to do a lot of that. Jamie Mullarkey is not Bobby Green. He is not Dan Hooker. I've called him a discount Dan Hooker a couple of times because he's like a tall, boxing heavy, but like grappling capable guy who uses his reach. It's very, very similar. Watch the two of them fight and tell me I'm wrong. But yeah, the problem is that like he's also significantly above Landon Quinones, and Quinones was really, really hard for him to beat. So Mullarkey's big. He's durable for the most part. He has solid striking fundamentals. He utilizes his jab well. He builds combinations. He can fight at a high pace. He's, at least compared to Haqparast, a pretty creative and unpredictable striker. He's not a great athlete. That's a problem. And Hawk Paras doesn't really knock people out. He doesn't have the dynamic power has never really been there. He did knock out Joaquin Silva, and it's very, very impressive, but there's no one else. So I've got to go with Malarkey by decision to just kind of figure out what Hawk Paras is doing and start to counter it and start to build and start to take him apart. That's my honest assumption. And I think I saw Malarkey at underdog odds. Yeah, significant underdog odds. All right. Plus 155? No, plus 150 to about plus 165. And Hawk Paras is a minus 185 to minus 200 favorite, minus 210 favorite. Jeez. I'll probably be betting on Malarkey because that's kind of insane. Middleweight bout, Andre Muniz versus Jung Young Park. War! Iron Turtle, but I do have to pick Munoz. This is a sadness hedging pick. I like the Iron Turtle. He's not a great athlete. He's not a particularly big middleweight. Probably, honest, is more of a welterweight, but very good double leg, very good back take game, very, relatively basic boxing game, but the fundamentals are solid, and he puts it together in relatively creative ways. He's very good. He's maximizing what he does, and those are the fighters I love. But Munoz is the better athlete. He's the bigger fighter, and he is a stunningly good grappler. And that's the problem. If this were a kickboxing match, I would take Park because we've seen the problems of Munoz's striking. I mean, the guy got outstruck by Brendan Allen and then by Paul Craig, and that, that's a problem. The idea that he's been trying to become more of a striker lately has actually been kind of negative to him. But I don't really think that there's any way Park fights that does not initiate grappling exchanges at some point, unless he just instantly nukes Muniz. So if you're going to go ground with the Muniz is very, very, very good. Very good. Stunningly good. And as good as Park is, I just assume he gets submitted at some point if there's a prolonged grappling exchange, and I don't expect him to stay away from it. That being said, if I'm wrong on this, I will love it. I will love it. There will be a scream from my apartment if Jung Young Park wins. If I get to watch this live, because I do have a commentary gig on the same day. But if I get to watch this live, there will be a scream that will probably be able to be heard 4 houses down the block, because I'm a big fan. But there are limits to this game. There are style problems here, and I've got to go with Muniz. Muniz is surprisingly enough the underdog. I guess I'm not shocked. He has lost 2 fights by stoppage recently and kind of one-sided, but plus 130 to plus 155, that's a bettable line. And Park minus 160 to minus 190. So I'm going to refrain from betting on that one. I don't want to bet against Jung Young Park, but if you're going to bet and if you can lose the money, that's a line to look at. So is this next one. Welterweight bout between Kenan Song and Kevin Jousset. Song is a limited fighter. I've always kind of said this. He's just a very plain, bare bones range kickboxer. He's not super confident in the pocket. He's not super confident in the clinch. He's strong and so on. He's not easy to out wrestle, but he's not a confident or comfortable wrestler or grappler in any real shape or form. But he's a big hitter. Not necessarily a knockout guy. There's not a lot of knockouts on his list, but he was able to hurt Ian Gary pretty significantly. I know the stock of Ian Gary is a really, really weird thing right now, but it's still pretty impressive. He managed to get some things done against Rolando Bedoya, who had a very, very good performance against Chaos Williams in his debut. It's fine. It's not shocking, but it's fine. And there are some improvements he's been making lately. My only problem is that Kenan Song, who is 30 years old, is just now kind of improving. And also was really injury prone and so on. So I don't think he'll ever really rise above what he is right now. But mid-level action fighter, it's fine. Kevin Jousset is a guy with a substantial judo background, trains at City Kickboxing. He's got a considerable frame. He's 6'2", 75 inches of reach. He's pretty good. But he is stiff, not comfortable. And his striking is also very divorced from his grappling. There's no easy transition from what he's kind of learning from City Kickboxing to getting back to his judo roots. So like he kind of just ends up being this like physically imposing, uncomfortable strike with long range kickboxer. And that kind of sounds like the exact fight that Kenan Song wants. Right? Am I crazy on that? Jusette's pretty tough. Like I said, Song's not necessarily a knockout artist, so I see this going the distance, but I see Song winning. Now, we could see things just really click for Jusette. He's in a very, very good gym. He has a very solid kind of 1B, 2B game. So if he can learn to connect those two and mix it up a little bit more, he could be fairly good. But like he is also 30. And I know that 30, and I've said this a number of times, 30 is not old when it comes to like being on the planet. But in combat sports, it kind of is. So, yeah. I've got Kenan Song by decision. Jusette is a long-term, much more interesting fighter. An interesting science experiment. But I don't know. Beating Kiefer Crosby just doesn't really... It's not really a thing for me. I'll be tempted to bet on Song. He's plus 112 to plus 130. You can get Jusette at minus 137 to minus 160, according to Best Fight Odds. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. It's an odd favoriting thing. Like Jusette just really hasn't beaten anyone good. Like if Jusette goes out there and like things click and he puts on a really dominant display here, I can't say I'll be surprised, but like I think you're counting on fighter development to happen. And that's always a tricky roll of dice mixed bag thing. So that's my take. There you go. Hong Sung Park versus Shannon Ross. I'm taking Park. I wasn't exceptionally impressed with Park during the road to the UFC tournament, just because of the level of competition was not high. But he's a good scrambler. He seems to have good power. Fairly well-rounded guy. Bit messy as a striker, but like it's functional with good athleticism. It can work. There's plenty to build on. He's 28 years old. He may make some improvements. Shannon Ross is a punching bag. I've never actually been able to figure out what he's good at. Like, it was the moment that the Dana White Contender Series just completely jumped the sharks because hang on. Who was it? I think it was Vinicius Salvador, if I'm not mistaken, that he fought on Contender Series. He got knocked out in the second round. And then he lost. Then he somehow got signed to the UFC and lost to Clayton Rodriguez and Jesus Aguilar by knockout, both in sub 1 minute. The guy is not durable. The guy is getting knocked out at 125 and should retire. There you go. And it's not like he's some amazing grappler because he's got, let's see here, one submission victory over 1-1 Shane Parker in 2015. The only name that he has beaten that I recognize is... wait. He lost. He lost to Ashkan Mokhtarian, the great can crusher of Australia. The guy who like kind of looked like he should have been a reasonably good fighter. Can crushed his way to a 13-1 record, got to the UFC and got steamrolled by John Moraga, Ryan Benoit. And they were like, oh my God, this was a mistake. And then like he was supposed to fight Janelle Lawson and then they let him go. No. Ross is not UFC caliber. I'm not 100% certain that Park is, but Park is 8-0 at least. He has beaten the low-level competition put in front of him. Please God tell me Ross is a massive underdog. He's not. He is only like plus 400 to plus 475. I would bet on Park at minus 549 to minus 670 odds. I would do that. I would normally not touch those kind of odds, but I might because this is insane. This is dumb. This is so stupid. It's so stupid that he's still around. He has become my punching bag. Steve Garcia, Mel Costa already broke down, and then Garcia got sick. they're doing the 155 here thing instead of 145. I like that. It's nice. I'm taking Costa by TKO. My predictions from last time still largely just stand. It's not like it's not like Garcia getting sick or the fight being canceled is going to affect my breakdown positively for Garcia. It's not going to affect it negatively, but it's not going to affect it positively. I guess he's cutting less weight now. I guess that would work somewhat well, but like he's plus 200 to plus 220. Costa is minus 250 to minus 275. That's maybe a little steep, but like, you know, it's a fine fight, but it is not a good fight. I don't know. I shouldn't say that. It is a good fight, but like it's not one that I'm super mysterious as to who's going to win. There you go. Put it that way. Stephanie Egger versus Luana Santos at 135. I don't know why Santos is going up to 135. One of her big aspects of 125 was strength, clinch control, wrestling, top positional grappling. It's just kind of weird. I don't really get this move. Not that she's going to be small. Like she's 5'6", 65-inch reach. You know, she's big enough to compete at 135, and 135 is a very, very shallow pool. But it does mean that you're going to end up in fights like this with Stephanie Egger, where it's like, all right, your game is to clinch, put someone up against the fence, take them down, and work your judo game. And you're facing a more decorated and bigger judoka. Seems a bit weird. Seems like a fight I wouldn't accept if I was Santos's camp. Now, Egger has let me down. She lost to Mayra Buena Silva when she got her arm ripped off. And then even more concerning, she got knee barred by Irina Alekseeva. So, like, there is, like, do I dare trust Stephanie Egger again? I think I have to, because Santos is not the fighter, just full stop, that Mayra Buena Silva is. She's not the athlete. She's not the striker. She's not the dynamic grappler that Silva is. And while I probably actually think she's better than Irina Alekseeva is, how do I put this delicately? She's not as dynamic or as athletic. Because like Alekseeva, for all of her complete lack of like actual technique, is a massive and fairly athletic fighter. Santos is not that. She's perfectly fine, but she's not some dynamic submission artist. She is a clinch and control grappler. And she's smaller. And she's not used to that. I gotta go with Egger by decision, but God, do I not feel good about trusting Stephanie Egger at this point, having been burned multiple times. Like, here. This is. I'm holding a Gatorade bottle in my hand. Oh God, it's hot. It's burning me. That's Stephanie Egger. Anyways, Egger is the underdog. I can't fault this. I literally can't. Plus 120 to plus 145. And Santos is the favorite at minus 150 to minus 180. It's just, I don't think that going up a weight class is a good idea for Santos, and I don't think this is a good stylistic matchup. I have to go where the analytics lead me, even though there is a significant portion of my brain, the emotional part of it, the gut feels part of it. My gut is on fire right now going, you can't pick Egger again. You can't do this. You can't do this to your blood pressure. But I am. Carlos Hernandez versus Tetsuya Taira. This is a fun fight, but it does feel like they're kind of babying Taira at this point. But like at the same time, he is a 23-year-old flyweight. There's not a lot to work with here. There is like this kind of really big void between like the top featherweights or the flyweights and the bottom level of flyweights. Like there is like this middle area that is like completely missing. Hernandez is a fine fighter. He's well-rounded. He's scrappy as all heck. He is game for a fight. I have big appreciation for him. But he's not really a clean technician in any way, shape, or form. And he's not a very good athlete. He kind of does compare to like the CJ Vergara's and the Carlos Candelarios of the world, who Tetsuya Taira has already beaten. He's like a better version of them. he offers, I guess, a little bit more. He's, fairly big, 5'8" guy at flyweight. That's significantly big. But like, while he is 9-2 and that record looks pretty nice, you look at his fight with Alan Nascimento. That's his big step up in competition. No disrespect to Victor Altamirano or Daniel Barres or Dennis Bondar. Those are all guys who are like kind of borderline UFC talents. His only step up to fight a guy like Nascimento was to lose, and lose pretty badly. He's a VFS Academy guy. I'm still not a huge believer in the Valley Flow system, but I got to go with Taira by decision or by submission. I don't think he has a way of avoiding the very, very, very good grappling game of Tetsuya Taira and the clean boxing of Taira. And a lot of my big worries about Taira coming in was him coming off the Japanese scene, where like they fight like this kind of weird divorce meta that like goes into even their training, where like their training is subsected into like, all right, you're going to this coach to learn your grappling, and it's going to be divorced from your striking. You're going to go to this striking coach, and he's going to teach you some good like striking ideas, but they don't in any way fit with your grappling, and you end up with this kind of like isolated multi-part game that works fine on the Japanese regional scene because everyone's kind of doing the same thing, or they're being like just one trick ponies. And you're going to run into problems. And also being a 5'7" flyweight on the Japanese regional scene, you're huge. But honestly, he's passed every test with like pretty much flying colors. Like there is not really a critique I can level at Taira's entire run in the UFC. He went out there and he beat Carlos Candelario. He went out there and he beat CJ Vergara, submitted him, submitted Jesus Aguilar, went to decision with Edgar Shirez. That's fine. Like, particularly Aguilar and Shirez have both looked actually a fair bit better than I expected in like subsequent fights. So yeah, I've got to go with Taira here to win a submission. I imagine he is a prohibitive favorite. Yeah, he is. He's like the biggest favorite on the card. Minus 549 at the low end to minus. Had a sneeze there. Minus 650. Hernandez is a plus 430 at the high end to plus 380. It's always fun to like sprinkle something on something like that, but like I would not bet any significant money on that fight. At Taira, there's just not enough there at the long end, and at Hernandez, I just don't know what a win for him even looks like. Ryan Dos Santos, I hope I'm saying that correctly. Talita Alencar. I say I hope I'm pronouncing Dos Santos' name right because I've watched a lot of her fights and it gets pronounced so many different ways. So like I'm hoping I've gone with this one and I'm hoping it's the right one. I'm a pretty big fan. She's a fun, admittedly unpolished striker, but with a good grappling game, with good physicality for atom weight. Remember that statement. I have no idea how she didn't get a contract on the Dana White Contender Series after losing to DC Gomes because Shannon Ross got a contract. Other people have gotten contracts for being just like kind of stupid meme fighters. I guess having a like actually competitive fight with Denise Gomez, who is a pretty like decent striker, is not as impressive to Dana White, I guess, but not to me. And then she went into Invicta, went and won the title off of Jillian DeCourcy with 25 minutes of like a very solid performance where she like handled the one of, if not the best women's atomweight in the world. Don't let Jillian DeCourcy's record fool you because she's like 6-4 or whatever. But like when she fights at 105, she is very good. And the problem is just like finding 105 fights in the world. It's kind of hard. And you end up in the UFC as a strawweight. That's a problem. On the bright side for her, she is fighting Talita Alencar, who is a pretty small fighter also. She's 5'1", 58.5-inch reach. Dos Santos is 5'2", 62-inch reach. They're both atomweights. They're both people that if the UFC decided to bring in an atomweight division, would definitely end up there with your Tabitha Ricci's, your Luma Lupumes, probably Tisha Torres and Michelle Watterson, who have both commented in the past how they're putting weight on. that is not even functional weight just to give them size to fight at strawweight. And again, this is kind of weird. I've had this like speech, I guess you could call it, before, where I have said that it's very weird that we don't have an atom weight division. It's very, very weird because, like, particularly WME, the parent company to Endeavor, to TKO Sports, etc., is actually the talent agency that represents Michelle Waterson. And it was always just very, very bizarre that one of the most marketable fighters the UFC has did not, and one that their ownership was invested in, did not have a division for her. It's very weird. Like, it would have been very easy, without even like being particularly cherry picking, to put a belt on Michelle Waterson by just having a 105 division. You could do it. I don't understand that. I cannot take Alan Carr here, and I'm probably going to have a hard time picking her in general because she fits that mold of Tabitha Ricci. And what I mean by that is Tabitha Ricci is this person who is reliant on pressuring into the clinch, getting takedowns, and getting top control, and doing her grappling thing. And she's very, very good at it, but it's something that, being smaller, tends to be a problem. Now, Ricci has constantly proved me wrong, but Ricci has an actually high-level judo takedown game that Alan Carr does not have. Her takedowns are very women's Brazilian jiu-jitsu. Very limited, not great drive, not great physicality. She's small. She can be shut down by just like size. Now, Dos Santos doesn't have obviously those elements, because she's, the same size, basically. She's a little bigger probably, but like, she is, plus athlete in this matchup. She should be able to shut that down. She should be able to just kind of hoss her way through this whole thing. And she's a far, far better striker, because the only thing I can say about Alan Carr's striking that I particularly like is the fact that there's a reasonable amount of composure there. Like, she'll get hit hard, and there's not that lost expression in her eyes. There's not that panic that a lot of grapplers tend to have. But like, she goes out there, she has composure, and the problem ends up being that, like, she's going to get beat. So that's all I have on that one. I'm picking Dos Santos by decision. And we'll check out the odds here. Dos Santos is a relatively small favorite. I'll probably put some money on her. Minus 145 to minus 162. And Alan Carr is a plus 120 to plus 135 underdog. Dos Santos should win that fight. I have a lot more faith in her than I do in Alan Carr. I just think that Alan Carr's game, without Tabitha Ricci's athleticism, without Tabitha Ricci's judo game, is going to be a bit of a dead end. Which is a shame, because, she's not a bad fighter. She's just a fighter without a weight class. And at 33 years old, I would honestly kind of prefer to see her go the Invicta route. Like, Dos Santos is leaving, title's going to be up for grabs. Just go do that. Rather than fight for 10-10 and probably lose a bunch. She also had a draw on Contender Series. I can't find that Contender Series fight anywhere. If you can find that Contender Series fight, give it to me. I don't think it would affect my pick here, because I don't remotely recognize the person that she was fighting. Hang on. It was Stephanie something. Stephanie Luciano, who is a 5-1 Brazilian fighter, coming into that fight, who had actually beaten some pretty on paper good fighters here. Karina Ardane is 5-0, 5-2 now. Yeah, can't crush her otherwise, though. This is the problem with regional MMA, is you find people with like Aline Oliveira, who's like first losses to Luciano, but she's lost every fight since and is now 2-5. That's another great example of that. She lost to a 3-1-1 Andressa Romero, who is look at those abs. Jeez. She's 6-3-1. But yeah, her biggest win is Aline Sademeyer, who has a losing record, but has fought like at least a number of different people who are not bad. And then like Denise Gomes. So I don't know. Anyways, not going to get too far in that. If you got a link to it, let me know. Couldn't find it on Fight Pass. Couldn't find it on ESPN Plus. All right. That brings us to the end of this one. Please check out the links down below for links to my gaming streaming, as well as other places you can find the podcast. And obviously, there's a Discord where you can make a fighter and compete in the Discord sim. We got Bloody Mania December coming up. Christmas Beatdown. I'm going to actively pursue some people to challenge some people in Christmas Beatdown. I'm gonna get into the PMs because I want a proper card. I want to give you guys the Christmas gift that is bloody and violent. There you go. And also you can find me on Twitter, where you can engage in relatively stupid arguments with me. I recently got someone to block me by utilizing math to prove that John Jones, in fact, is an inactive heavyweight champion. That was kind of interesting. It was kind of weird. Like, I to be clear, I have no problem with people who like want to defend John Jones as like being heavyweight. I think he is the best heavyweight in the world. I actually don't have a problem with him having the belt. But like the idea that like, oh no, like this is normal. This is normal. No, it's not. there is no UFC heavyweight champion that has gone 18 months without defending their belt. That's just how it is. I'm sorry. Anyways, we'll leave it at that. Have a good one. Enjoy the fight card. It does have the feeling of maybe one of those like super underrated gems. We will see.